June 14, 1968. Kon Province, Central Highlands of South Vietnam. The rain has already soaked through the jungle canopy, dripping steadily onto Sergeant First Class Daniel Mac McAllister's helmet. It isn't loud, but it's constant. The kind of sound that drills into your skull when you've been lying still for hours, afraid to move, afraid even to breathe too deeply. Mac is 28 years old. He's been in country for almost a year. He's LRRP, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, 5th Special Forces Group, attached to the 101st Airborne. Officially, his 6-man team does not exist. They are 22 kilometers behind enemy lines. Mac lies prone, binoculars pressed into his eye sockets, elbows sunk into red clay and rotting leaves. Below him, in a narrow jungle trail cut like a scar through elephant grass, North Vietnamese army troops move in single file. AKs slung low, green uniforms dark with rain, helmets wrapped in strips of cloth to kill shine. No talking, no smoking, disciplined, at least a platoon, maybe more. Private First Class. Tommy Reyes is 3 meters to Mac's left, radio handset wrapped in plastic, antenna threaded up through vines. Specialist Doc Harris watches the rear, Claymore detonator in one trembling hand. Nobody blinks. Nobody shifts. One wrong sound, one snapped twig, one accidental cough, and the jungle will explode. Mac feels the familiar pressure in his chest, the question that every LRRP learns to bury. Could we take them? He knows the answer. They could kill maybe 2, 3, if they're lucky. Then the jungle would wake up, because the first shot is never the fight. The first shot is the signal. LRRPs are not infantry. They are not here to hold ground, to clear trails, to win engagements. Their mission is simple and unforgiving. See without being seen. Any firefight means detection. Detection means pursuit. And pursuit, out here, means death. Mac lowers the binoculars slowly. He doesn't look at his men. He doesn't need to. They already know. No hand signals are required, no whispered orders. Every LRRP is trained on this rule until it becomes instinct. Avoid contact at all costs. This rule wasn't born in a classroom. It was written in blood. 2 years earlier, in 1966, LRRP units, then still called LRP teams before being redesignated ranger companies, learned the truth the hard way. Early patrols, many staffed by conventional infantry volunteers, operated under the assumption that they could fight their way out if compromised. They couldn't. The PAVN didn't react like guerrillas. They reacted like hunters. A single rifle crack could bring down a company. Sometimes a battalion. They didn't charge blindly. They flanked. They blocked trails. They pushed teams toward kill zones. Mortar tubes appeared where none had existed hours before. Dogs were released. Trackers followed broken branches, disturbed leaves, crushed grass. LRRPs carried light weapons by necessity. CAR-15s with short barrels, Swedish K-submachine guns early on, limited ammo. Claymores for emergencies, no heavy weapons, no armor, no immediate backup. Extraction depended on helicopters, fragile lifelines that needed clearing, smoke, radio contact, and time. Time was the one thing a compromised LRRP never had. Mac remembers the briefing at Camp Evans months ago. The captain stood in front of a sand table, face hard, voice flat. "If you fire your weapon," he said, "you'd better already be running. Because the moment you do, you're no longer a recon team, you're prey." The jungle shifts below. The PAVN column halts. One soldier kneels, scanning the trees. Another raises a fist. Mac's heart rate spikes. This is the moment, the edge of the knife. Doc Harris tightens his grip on the Claymore clacker. Reyes glances at Mac, eyes wide but steady. Sweat runs down Mac's spine despite the rain. A burst of gunfire would be easy, reflexive, almost comforting. Training from another life whispers, "Engage." But that voice doesn't belong here. Mac presses 2 fingers into the mud. "Stay." The PAVN soldier lowers his rifle. The column moves again. Minutes stretch into an eternity. Eventually, the last helmet disappears into the green. Only then does Mac allow himself to exhale. This is why LRRPs were told to avoid firefights. Not because they were afraid to fight, but because fighting was never the mission. Every bullet fired erased the one advantage they had, invisibility. And in Vietnam, once the jungle knew you were there, it never let you go. Mac waits another 10 minutes before signaling movement. 2 fingers, Slow circle. The patrol melts backward, each man lifting his boot carefully, placing it down heel to toe, erasing footprints with a branch dragged behind the last man. No talking, no urgency. Urgency makes mistakes. They move only 100 meters before halting again. LRRP doctrine is ruthless about patience. Distance means nothing if noise gives you away. As they settle in, Mac's mind drifts, unbidden, to a story told in whispers at Camp Evans. A team from Company E, 75th Infantry, late 67. Similar terrain, similar mission. They'd been compromised by something small. Nobody ever figured out what. A glint of metal, maybe. A boot print, too deep. A cough. The point man fired first. It wasn't panic, it was instinct. An NVA soldier rose suddenly from a spider hole 10 meters ahead. Close enough to see his eyes widen, close enough to smell him. The American fired. The team killed him instantly, clean shot, silent almost, except for the crack of the round. Within minutes, the jungle answered. Trip flares ignited uphill, whistles echoed, bugle calls, yes, bugles, sounded from multiple directions, relaying contact faster than any radio. Mortars walked inward with mathematical precision, driving the team downslope toward a creek bed. They tried to break contact. Claymores blew, bodies fell, but the PAVN didn't stop. They surged, bypassed, flanked. They weren't charging the Americans, they were guiding them. By the time the extraction birds arrived, the team was already broken into pairs. Smoke marked the LZ. The smoke marked them too. Only 2 men came out. This was why the rule existed. LRRPs learned that a firefight didn't just attract attention, it activated an entire system. The PAVN weren't reacting emotionally. They were executing rehearsed containment drills. Mac had seen the maps captured from enemy bunkers, colored pencil markings, pre-planned blocking positions along ridgelines and streams, rally points for hunter-killer squads, mortar reference points etched into memory. Once contact was made, the NVA assumed only one thing: there are more Americans nearby, and they were usually right. LRRP patrols rarely operated alone. They leapfrogged, they overlapped. If one team was spotted, others might be close, so the enemy responded with overwhelming force, not to kill a single patrol, but to sterilize the entire area. Mac checks his watch. They've been on the ground for 14 hours, another 10 before extraction window. That's the second reason firefights were forbidden. Time. A conventional infantry platoon could dig in, call artillery, airstrikes, gunships. LRRP teams could do none of that without exposing their exact position. Every radio transmission risked triangulation. Every smoke grenade was a beacon. They lived on a fragile illusion that they weren't really there. Even their gear reflected it. No standard issue helmets early on, too heavy, too noisy, soft jungle boots, blackened metal, tape wrapped around buckles, dog tags left behind. Faces camouflaged not for intimidation, but for reflection control. Mac remembers his first patrol months earlier. How unnatural it felt to let enemies walk past unchallenged, to count them, to sketch their weapons, to note direction of movement and do nothing. He'd been raised on stories of fire superiority, of initiative, of aggressive action. LRRP training erased that mindset. Aggression was replaced with restraint. Courage wasn't pulling the trigger, it was resisting it. Below them, a distant thump rolls through the jungle. Mortar fire. Somewhere else. Someone else's problem. Mac knows exactly what that sound means. A recon team didn't stay invisible. Reyes shifts slightly, careful, eyes asking a question without words. Mac shakes his head once. No movement, no contact. The mission isn't to fight, it's to come back with information no one else can get. Enemy strength, direction, intent. That information handed quietly to an intelligence officer will shape airstrikes, battalion movements, entire operations. LRRP teams didn't win battles with bullets. They won them with silence, and silence only survives if you never announce yourself. As night begins to settle, the jungle changes character. Insects rise, the canopy thickens. Sound carries differently. This is the most dangerous time. Mac signals for night posture. Weapons angled down, claymores prepped but not armed. Radios checked once. Quick, whispered click. If they're found now, extraction will be hours away, and if they fire now, the jungle will close in from all sides. LRRPs weren't told to avoid firefights because command didn't trust them. They were told because the jungle had already proven, again and again, that no one wins one out here. January 22nd, 1969, Camp Evans. 04:30 hours. The classroom smells like wet canvas, burnt coffee, and sweat that never quite washes out. A dozen men sit on ammo crates, weapons leaning against the wall, faces hollowed by weeks in the field. Some are veterans, some are replacements. All of them listen. Captain Robert Hensley doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. On the table in front of him are photographs, black and white, blurred, enlarged too much, bodies tangled in vines, a radio smashed flat, a helmet half buried in mud. "This," he says, tapping one photo, "is what happens when you forget what you are." No names are spoken. Everyone already knows the story. A ranger team operating near the Laotian border. Mission: observe a suspected supply corridor feeding the Ho Chi Minh Trail. 7 men. Excellent terrain masking. 2 days undetected. Then they saw something they weren't supposed to engage. A small logistics element, maybe 6 PAVN soldiers moving munitions uphill. The team leader made a calculation: if they wiped them out quietly, the trail might shut down for days. He gave the order. The ambush was textbook. Claymores, short bursts, total surprise. It lasted 30 seconds. The aftermath lasted 12 hours. By sunrise, 3 blocking forces had sealed the ridgelines, mortars collapsed their hide site, dogs picked up scent. Every attempted movement triggered probing fire, not aimed to kill, but to herd. They were never extracted. Captain Hensley lets the silence stretch. "Understand this," he says finally. "LRRPs don't conduct ambushes, they survive them." That doctrine wasn't theoretical. By 1968, LRRP units across Vietnam, 173rd Airborne, 101st Airborne, 1st Infantry Division, 25th Infantry Division, had standardized rules of engagement stricter than almost any other American force in theater. No contact unless unavoidable, no pursuit, no exploitation, break contact immediately if compromised. Even self-defense was measured in seconds, not minutes. Mac remembers being shocked when he first read the SOP. A line stood out, underlined in red. If contact exceeds 60 seconds, mission failure is assumed. 60 seconds. That wasn't about firefighting ability, it was about mathematics. The PAVN operated on interior lines. They knew the terrain. They had rehearsed response drills for every valley, every trail. A single shot could be relayed by runner, whistle, field phone, or radio faster than an LRRP team could move a kilometer. Once reaction forces were in motion, the odds inverted violently. Mac had seen it himself months earlier. A sister team, call sign Raven 2, had tripped a tripwire flare at dusk. No shots fired. No enemy seen. They moved immediately, textbook break contact. 3 hours later, they were still being shadowed. Single shots cracking at extreme range, just enough to keep them moving, steering them away from extraction zones. Testing. The enemy wasn't trying to kill them yet. They were waiting for daylight. Only a risky emergency extraction saved them. 2 slicks diving into a bomb crater clearing under fire, rotor wash, flattening grass already crawling with NVA scouts. That was with no firefight. Now imagine what happened when bullets actually flew. This was the reality that reshaped LRRP culture. Fire discipline wasn't just about noise, it was psychological control. Young soldiers arrived itching to prove themselves. Within weeks, they learned that restraint was the highest skill. They learned to count enemies without raising rifles, to let targets pass so close they could hear fabric scrape bark, to endure insects, hunger, dehydration, and fear without moving a muscle. They learned that the jungle rewarded patience and punished ego. Mac remembers his team sergeant during training, an older ranger with a scar down his jaw. "You want to shoot," the man said, "go infantry. You want to live, shut up and watch." Weapons choices reflected the same philosophy. Suppressors appeared on CAR-15s despite reliability issues. Subsonic ammo was tested. Claymores were positioned for denial, not kills. Blow a path open, then disappear. Even then, explosives were last resort. Because once you announced yourself, the jungle stopped being neutral. It became hostile terrain in the purest sense, alive, adaptive, merciless. Mac looks around the classroom. Every man here understands now, not because they were told, but because they felt it. The tightening feeling when the forest goes quiet, the sense of being watched from all directions. This is why LRRPs avoided firefights, not out of fear, out of respect for an enemy who learned faster, hunted smarter, and never forgot where blood had been spilled. June 15th, 1968. 05:117 hours, Kontum Province. First light bleeds slowly through the canopy, turning the mist a pale gray. Mac hasn't slept. None of them have. The night passed in fragments, listening, counting breaths, memorizing sounds that didn't belong. This is the most dangerous hour. The PAVN favor dawn. Visibility improves, helicopters can fly, and compromised teams make mistakes. Mac checks Reyes, pale, focused. The radio is already set to extraction frequency, volume barely above a whisper. Doc Harris has his claymore slung loose, detonator clipped to his harness. Not armed, never armed unless it's already too late. Extraction time minus 30 minutes. That doesn't mean helicopters are coming, it means they might. Mac signals a slow crawl toward the rally point, a shallow depression marked on his map as nothing special. That's exactly why it was chosen. Every movement is deliberate. No straight lines, no broken branches left uncorrected. They reach the position without incident. Then the jungle exhales. A single bird erupts from the canopy, flapping hard. Somewhere to the east, wood knocks. Too rhythmic. Human. Mac freezes. This is the moment LRRP training is built for, the decision space where panic gets men killed. He doesn't reach for his weapon. He reaches for his watch. If they fire now, they will die here. Not immediately, but certainly. Instead, he signals the fallback plan. 50 meters north, silent peel. No contact unless physically engaged. They move. A crack snaps behind them. Rifle fire, distant but probing, not aimed to kill. A test. Mac knows this pattern. They've been suspected, not confirmed. If they respond, suspicion becomes certainty. Another crack. Closer. Reyes stumbles on a root, catches himself at the last second. Doc Harris turns, heart pounding. Mac shakes his head sharply. No shots! Then the sound they've been waiting for, the deep, chopping thunder of rotor blades far off to the south. Extraction birds. The jungle reacts instantly. The sporadic shots stop, whistles carry, movement accelerates. Now it's a race, but not a firefight. Mac pops smoke only at the last possible moment, gray blooming briefly before rotor wash tears it apart. 2 UH-1 Hueys punch through the mist, door gunners scanning, engines screaming. The LZ is chaos for 10 seconds. Not bullets. Movement. Men sprinting, hands grabbing webbing. One slip, one missed grip, and the jungle claims you. Mac shoves Reyes up first, then Doc. He turns last, scanning instinctively. He sees them, PAVN soldiers at the tree line, rifles up but hesitant. They're close. Too close. But they don't fire, because firing would mean revealing themselves to gunships that aren't even here yet. Mac dives onto the skid. The Huey lifts violently. Leaves, dust, and debris explode upward. As the helicopter banks away, the jungle closes again. Quiet, green, unchanged. From above, it looks innocent. Back at Camp Evans, nobody celebrates. There are no victory speeches, no kill counts. The intel Mac hands over, numbers, direction of movement, weapons observed, will shape operations days later. Bombers will hit ridgelines, infantry will maneuver into blocking positions. The enemy column Mac saw may never know why the sky opens above them. That is the LRRP legacy. They weren't told to avoid firefights because they couldn't win them. They were told because winning a firefight meant losing the war they were actually fighting. The war for information, invisibility, and control of the battlefield without ever being seen. In Vietnam, survival wasn't about who shot best. It was about who stayed silent longest.